Welcome to the side event of the High-Level Political Forum 2023 on developing innovative capabilities for sustainable development, co-organized by UNCTAD and UNEP and co-sponsored by Portugal. I am Ana Cristina Moroso das Neves, and I'm the chair of the 27th Commission on Science and Technology for Development, and it is a great pleasure to moderate today's side event. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that this event is being recorded. The recording and the presentation materials will be uploaded to the event page. I encourage you to send us your comments and questions using the Q&A function, not the chat box, throughout the side event. After the opening remarks, presentations, and panel discussion, I hope that we will have an interactive discussion. So without further ado, let me invite Ms. Shamika Siriman, the Director of the Division on Technology and Logistics from UNCTAD, to deliver an opening remarks. Over to you, Shamika, please.
Thank you, Diana, Chair of the CSTD, for moderating this event. And colleagues, I'm sorry, I think I'm looking very red, but I am normally a brown person. Ambassador Ana Paula Zacarias, I know you will be joining us shortly, Permanent Representative of Portugal. Ms. Lydia Norona, Assistant Secretary General and Head of UNEP's New York office. Thank you for your support in co-organizing this event. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you for joining us today for this very important conversation that we need to continue. Thanks to our partners, today we have a very rich program that discusses good practices and recommendations on accelerating the achievement of SDGs 7 on affordable and clean energy and SDG 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Now, from UNCTAD's Technology and Innovation Report 2023 to UNEP's International Good Practice Principles for Sustainable Infrastructure and the case of Portugal in view of its second voluntary national review, Sierra Leone's examples and ADB's examples, we will look into how green technologies and sustainable infrastructure could offer transformative solutions to achieve both economic development and climate change mitigation. While we will have a detailed presentation on the Technology and Innovation Report 2023 a bit later by my colleague, I would like to share with you three key messages of the report that would resonate through your conversation. First, I want to highlight that developing countries must act quickly to seize green windows of opportunity while we are still at the beginning of the green revolution. History has shown that missing the early stage of a technological revolution creates gaps that are very hard to close. In contrast, early adopters will be able to move ahead fast and reap the benefits. And this is the well-known first mover advantage, and this is real. The current green technological wave offers enormous opportunities for economic diversification, trade expansion, job creation, and sustainable development. However, these benefits are not automatic, and developing countries must act now to build their capabilities and foster the growth of green sectors in their economies. Now, this brings me to my second message. Developing countries need urgently to design and implement the right policies to build the necessary capacities to take advantage of the green revolution, and the policies and incentives and right ones go a long way. That's what we find in our report. So in our report, we show that to be successful, developing countries must direct investments to enhance digital and physical infrastructures, strengthen their knowledge systems, and equip their workforce with technical skills. This surpasses different policy dimensions involving innovation, industrial, energy, and environmental policies. So more than ever, it is important to have effective coordination and ensure strategies are aligned and coherent, meaning a whole of government approach. One example that we write in our report is the efforts that the government of Namibia has made to develop green hydrogen. It established a Green Hydrogen Council to coordinate projects and infrastructure across the whole government and establish international cooperation to support hydrogen production. So well-coordinated national policies are critical, but not always sufficient. The success of developing countries also requires an enabling international environment. So this is my third point. The success of national policies depends on global cooperation through international trade, intellectual property rights systems, research collaboration, and financing. We have to ensure that international trade rules are consistent with the Paris Agreement on climate change to support the development of innovative capacities in less technologically advanced developing countries for cleaner and more productive production. We have to ensure that the intellectual property rights regime offers some flexibility for developing countries to emulate the production of more advanced countries, especially for environmentally sound technologies. Again, the low technologically capable countries need support. We have to ensure that the international community adopts partnership-oriented approach for research collaboration and increases funding to accelerate the development and deployment of green technologies. So, ladies and gentlemen, to turn the time-bound green windows of opportunity into reality, we have to act fast and act together to take advantage of this revolution that is just unfolding in front of our eyes. What we need is timely and well-coordinated policies to build the capacities in developing countries, to innovate for a more inclusive and sustainable future for us all. Without them, the green revolution will not close but widen inequalities, making latecomers more difficult to catch up. So I hope this event will serve as a platform for peer learning and idea exchange, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion and to continue this conversation that we have begun with our sister agency, UNEP. Thank you very much. Anna, over to you.
Thank you, Shamika. Thank you for these very important messages. Now we have Ms. Ligia Noronha, United Nations Assistant Secretary General and Head of UNEP's New York office, to say a few words. Ligia, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome you all today. And I really thank UNCTAD for co-organizing this event with UNEP and Portugal for co-sponsoring it. I would also like to extend my thanks to all the distinguished speakers and participants this morning for the important topic here, which is being discussed under the UN level, high-level political forum. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and a full recovery from COVID-19 requires substantial innovation, not only in terms of technologies and scientific skills, but also in terms of policy and creating a wider environment for enhancing productive capabilities, as you just heard Shamika speak to. This is incredibly important to bridge the kind of divide that we currently have and to ensure that the green transition happens to support everyone to a safer planet. Central to this thinking is the way we conceive, plan, and deliver infrastructure systems, while underpinning Sustainable Development Goals 9 and 7 on affordable and clean energy. Infrastructure provides essential provisioning services across all sectors, and it can be a powerful tool to boost productivity, address inequalities, and create decent jobs. So it can help promote not only environmental justices, but also social justice, and this is key. Overall infrastructure directly and indirectly influences over 90% of the individual SDG targets. However, currently, the world's stock of infrastructure is responsible for over 4/5 of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Around 13 million species are lost annually from infrastructure-related land use, while the built environment is generally also the greatest source of waste generation and energy demand. Given the lifespan of infrastructure, ladies and gentlemen, this means a lock-in of technologies which can stop us having the transitions that we need for everyone to prosper on this planet. We need to view the enabling environment, built environment, and natural environment as interconnected systems, promoting innovative solutions that strengthen the synergies between them. But this calls for investments in infrastructure. But as we heard from the recently launched report of UNCTAD, the World Investment Report of 2023, these investments, while they're going to green finance, they are not actually being distributed equally. A lot of them are going to the developed countries and a lot to the emerging economies, but not enough to a number of the least developed countries. And if we want to invest in innovative capabilities and in productive capabilities, investments need to be distributed in a much more equal way. There are many different ways in which innovation is needed for quality, reliable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure. SDG 9 covers specific targets, including, for example, to upgrade infrastructure by 2030 with clean and environmentally sound technologies. To achieve this, innovative approaches are needed for planning service delivery, innovative financing mechanisms for nature-based solutions, or innovative use of data and digital infrastructure to monitor the performance of infrastructure systems. You will soon hear from my colleague on the International Good Practice Principles for Sustainable Infrastructure, which provides a guiding framework to integrate sustainability across such systems. The 10 principles are now recognized in the UN Environment Assembly Resolution on Sustainable and Resilient Infrastructure, which encourages their implementation and also calls for sharing of experiences and peer-to-peer learning, as we heard Shamika also mention. In the spirit, ladies and gentlemen, we hope the diverse examples of green innovation that we will hear today will inspire us towards more innovative capabilities for sustainable development at the scale and the urgency required. We need much more of the SDG 17 as we move forward in order to increase the scale and urgency that we need. Thank you again for your presence here today. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Ligia, and thank you for these very interesting messages from UNEP. May I invite now Ambassador Ana Paula Zacarias, permanent representative of Portugal to the United Nations, to deliver an opening remarks, please. Good morning, bon dia.
Good morning, bon dia, Anna. Good morning, Shamika, Ligia, dear colleagues, dear friends that are online. For some of you, it's already good afternoon. It's a big pleasure to be here with you today. And I would really like to thank UNCTAD and UNEP for organizing this event that we gladly co-sponsored. This is a very good opportunity, a unique opportunity, I would say, to showcase Portugal's commitment to the SDGs as we prepare to present our VNR next week here in the UN. And we will have a couple of other side events during next week. One of it, it's entitled Towards a Renewed Social Contract, Lessons Learned from the Portuguese VNR, where we tackle the questions of inequality and fighting against poverty and all the social elements that are connected with the implementation of the SDGs in Portugal. For the Ministerial Week, we will have two vice ministers here, the vice minister that takes care of foreign affairs and cooperation, and also the Secretary of State of the Presidency of the Council of Ministers. And I am very glad that today we have with us Mr. Nelson Lage, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the National Agency for Energy, with a long experience in the public sector in the area of energy innovation and international relations. And he, much better than I, can explain what have we done and what is the history of our commitment to SDG 7 in Portugal and to the renewable energy. We have done what we have a long history in this. I would say that it started more than 20 years ago with a prime minister called Antonio Guterres. You've probably heard of him. So, and this whole thing started based on the idea that we cannot we do not have to choose between poverty reduction and the protection of the planet. We have to do them both at the same time. So the idea is that we need to achieve universal access to electricity, ensuring that 100% of our population has access to reliable power, and we did so using renewable sources. Access to energy and increase in the share of renewable energies are two sides of the same coin, and we are in 2021, Portugal attained a record share of 34% in renewable energy in gross final energy consumption. Regarding more specifically electricity production, we have since set an ambitious goal of reaching 80% renewables in the electricity production mix by 2026. We are also working on the production of green hydrogen, which is another interesting and important source of energy. We have done what we can in terms of solar energy, wind energy, hydroelectrical power. This experience, as reflected in our VNR, shows that using these endogenous resources to achieve a reliable, clean, and competitive priced energy not only enhances supply security, but fosters also investment and job creation. Paired with advances in energy efficiency, which is fundamental also, and the European Union has talked and done a lot in terms of energy efficiency. This contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions reduction, and it contributes to the green transition, and therefore, again, to the achievement of both the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement. I would say this is the story of my country, but this could be also the story of many other countries. We have been working with others. We have a particularly interesting experience now with Cabo Verde. The idea here is that we signed a memorandum quite recently with Cabo Verde for 140 million euro debt for nature swaps aimed at supporting investment in the country, green and blue economy through its climate and environment fund. So finally, and the two prime ministers of Portugal and Cape Verde are even talking about advancing further in this direction and making this cooperation even bigger. In other words, it is important that we share this experience of what we are doing internally and also what we are doing in terms of cooperation with other partners. This is fundamental if we want to achieve the implementation of the SDGs and the Agenda 2030. And I believe that, and I want to thank UNCTAD for its report, the Technology and Innovation Report, and UNEP for the International Good Practices Principle for Sustainable Infrastructure. They can really guide our work, and it was very interesting to listen to the presentations. So we really need to continue and develop on this trend. Clear and important issue also is financing, and we've been also tackling this matter not only internally, developing the national resources that I need to green investment, but also in terms of the support to other countries with whom we cooperate. And we believe that the multilateral development banks have a key role to play in this regard, and this has been made clear by an increased discussion that we have been having in this domain. So I agree with all that has been said. I hope that our national experience provides inspiration and possible ways forward, and I really want to thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for presenting briefly the case of Portugal and the example of a partnership with Cape Verde, very important. And now we are concluding our opening remarks and moving to the other part of our side event. So now we are moving to the presentations. We'll have two speakers, and so this session will last 20 minutes, and each speaker will talk by 10 minutes. So to inform the discussion on today's topic, we have two presentations from UNCTAD and UNEP. First, may I invite Mr. Angel Gonzalez Sanz, Head of Technology, Innovation and Knowledge Development Branch, Division on Technology and Logistics from UNCTAD, to present the major findings and recommendations of the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, and good morning, good afternoon to all the speakers. I would like to share my screen to show a few slides about our report. I hope it's visible to everyone.
I think it is.
It is my great pleasure to present to you some of the key findings and policy recommendations of the Technology and Innovation Report 2023 that was prepared by UNCTAD, and which focuses on the technological opportunities for a low carbon world. To begin with, I would like to echo one of the key messages that Shamika mentioned in her introductory remarks, namely that we are at the beginning of a new technological wave of change around frontier technologies in the low carbon energy sector. And as we saw in this slide, we know that every time in history where we have gone through a period of technological change of this significance, the income gaps between the center, the core countries, and the periphery, or developed and developing countries, if you want to use a more traditional terminology, has consistently grown. So our message is that unless countries, developing countries, act very quickly to catch this new wave of technological change, the risk that they will be left behind again, and that this inequality in terms of income across countries would perpetuate itself is very significant. It seems that we are going back.
And now we will help control the slide for you.
Okay.
You can keep going.
One of the more important messages of our report is that there are huge opportunities in the development of frontier technologies in the area of renewable technologies, or what we call green frontier technologies. According to our estimates, and these concern about 17 frontier technologies, mostly in the green technologies area, but also in technologies like artificial intelligence or Internet of Things, Industry 4.0. According to our estimates, these technologies represent around $1.5 trillion currently. But more importantly, they could grow quickly in the next few years to represent a market of $9.5 trillion by 2030, we estimate. And this, of course, means that there are very, very significant opportunities for developing countries in terms of job creation, income generation, and improved participation in international trade. Next, please. The not so optimistic message is that when one examines how these market opportunities are being seized, we see that most of the opportunities at the moment are being are benefiting developed economies, particularly in terms of exports of green technologies. Developed countries have experienced a much stronger growth than what we have seen from developing countries, and the majority of the providers of the technologies that have been surveyed in the report are found in the developed economies, with a very few developing countries participating in these sectors. This again emphasizes the message that countries have to act fast if they want to harness the potential of green technologies for development. Next, please. In order to assess the readiness of individual countries to take advantage of these technological opportunities, we have compiled Frontier Technology Readiness Index that tries to synthesize information from indicators on ICTs, on skills, on investment in research and development, overall industrial capacity, and finance. We rank 166 countries, and as you can see in this slide, the top ranks in this index are captured by developed economies. Developing countries concentrate in the second and third tier of the chart. The chart also indicates that the countries that are the least prepared to take advantage of this technological revolution are countries in Latin America and the Caribbean and in Sub-Saharan Africa. At the same time, if one looks at the performance of individual countries, we can see that efforts at the national level to prepare themselves to use and develop these technologies can pay off significantly. For example, Brazil was able to enhance its position due to investments in ICT development. We also noted how India, who is the best overperformer, is ranking at 67 positions ahead of where it should be placed if one only took into consideration its income per capita level. And in this case, it reflects its very strong performance in terms of investment in research and development and its very, very significant capacity to train people in the ICT sector. Next, please. The report points to three possible paths for countries to seize the benefits of the green technological revolution. The first one is about using the technologies themselves. It's very difficult to excel at any technology that is not being used in the national economy. The second is to green traditional value chains, in particular by adopting the ICT technologies or digital technologies. And the third is by choosing strategic development paths that target more developed, more complex, more sophisticated products that have higher value added and at the same time have lower carbon footprints. Please. In the first discussion about how to save the national policies to seize these opportunities, emphasizes that there are two elements that have to be taken into account. One is the national preconditions, and not every country is placed in the same context in terms of its natural resources, the availability of human capital, its financial position, and so on and so forth. So there are preconditions that are significant in terms of shaping the possibility of countries to catch this wave early on. At the same time, preconditions are not everything. There is a need also for a very strong public policy response to seize the opportunities created by those preconditions. And one example that we quote in the report is the decisions made by the government of China in terms of measures like the 2006 renewable energy law, the initiatives that they have undertaken to benefit from the talent that exists in the Chinese diaspora around the world, also incentives provided for the deployment of solar photovoltaic technology through the solar rooftop subsidy. Another consideration that we are making in the report is that even if strong preconditions do not exist in the country, a powerful public policy response can still make it possible for the country to benefit from these windows of opportunity that we insist are time-bound and not going to be available for a very long time. An example of this that we mentioned in the report is the policy followed by the government of Thailand to support the adoption and deployment of biogas, for which there were not very strong existing preconditions and in which the private sector was not particularly interested when the decision was made, but through a decided policy of support, the adoption of the technology developed quite quickly. Next, please. The second element that we mentioned.
Sorry, you just have 1 minute left.
Okay, then in that case, I will just say that digital technologies offer a very, very powerful instrument to green existing value chains and to reduce the carbon footprint of every stage in the value chain. Next, please. Another important action is to prioritize decision-making in terms of the sectors where the country wants to invest. And for that, UNCTAD has developed an interesting tool that examines the possibility of 43,000 products to on which countries can focus in order to elaborate their strategic choices. Next, please. I would not insist too much on the national policies because these are, in a way, traditional ones in terms of strengthening the national innovation system and also building productive capacities that are needed in any policy menu in terms of industrial development. We would like to, next please, to focus more on the messages about international cooperation. And as Shamika also mentioned in her introductory remarks, there are a number of recommendations that focus with the creation of an enabling environment at the international level so that countries can actually implement policies that enable them to jump into this technological revolution. In particular, we call for a greater flexibility of international trade rules that make these rules more consistent with international agreements concerning climate change. Countries should be able to protect their infant industries through subsidies, through public procurement policies, through tariff protection. The same flexibility would be necessary in terms of the intellectual property rights system so that developing countries can actually adopt the same development paths that have benefited developed countries in the development of earlier technological revolutions. The rest of our recommendations have to do with developing partnerships in the area of research and development so that the knowledge that is being generated is more efficiently shared and circulates around the world. Also, a strong cooperation in terms of assessing technologies so that strategic choices made by developing countries are better aligned with a priority in terms of development policy, but also in terms of more equitable outcomes after the implementation of these policies. And finally, we call for regional and South-South.
Can you conclude, please?
Thank you very much. This completes the presentation. I think I barely
Thank you so much.
made it. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, Angel, I think that the link for the full report will be inserted in the chat box, right?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Angel, very much. So for more details, please find the link of the full report in the chat box. Next, we have the International Good Practice Principles for Sustainable Infrastructure from UNEP. So may I invite Mr. Joseph Price from Sustainable Infrastructure Investment Team, UNEP, to share with us the key message and case studies, please. So you have 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to present to you the International Good Practice Principles for Sustainable Infrastructure, which are really the product of collaboration across the UN and beyond. So I'll just start off by providing a little bit of context and the background to the development of the principles before I move on to outlining the principles themselves. And then I'll provide a couple of examples to link them specifically to the topic of this event. So on the next slide, as Ligia referred to in her opening remarks, the entry point really in the context for this work is the fact that infrastructure influences 92% of the individual SDG targets. It's central to addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature loss, and pollution. And these realities were recognized at the UN Environment Assembly. So member states have adopted 2 resolutions on sustainable and resilient infrastructure. The first in 2019 initiated the development of these principles through the UNEP-led Sustainable Infrastructure Partnership. So an expert working group was set up to begin drafting the principles before there was regional consultations with all member states who provided valuable inputs and feedback on the principles. And then the principles themselves were consulted upon and endorsed across the UN system through the UN Environment Management Group, which essentially coordinates environmental issues across the UN. And so based on all this and following on from all this, the principles were recognized in the second UNEP resolution on sustainable and resilient infrastructure. And that encourages member states and other stakeholders to consider implementing and integrating them in national plans and policies for infrastructure. So on the next slide, please. The principles comprise 10 high-level guiding principles primarily for policymakers and governments, but also other infrastructure actors and stakeholders. They follow so-called integrated systems level approaches, and I'll speak a bit more about that on the next slide in terms of what that means exactly. But ultimately, they provide guidance on creating an enabling environment for sustainable infrastructure nationally. So on the next slide, please. So the overall approach then is one that focuses on integration of all aspects of sustainability, so environmental sustainability, but also social, economic, and institutional aspects as well. And the principles highlight integration across different infrastructure systems and sectors, rather than just looking at sustainability purely on a project-by-project basis. So this is important for maximizing synergies across sectors, minimizing trade-offs, and implicit in this is the idea of understanding impacts and benefits at the aggregate level. So again, looking beyond an individual project to understand cumulative effects, for example, at the landscape scale. And embedded within this overall approach is the idea of a needs-based perspective. So understanding the underlying service needs in communities, and then assessing those needs and meeting them through the most sustainable and effective options available. So considering a really wide range of solutions, including nature-based solutions, but also retrofitting or repurposing existing infrastructure, in addition to the more traditional approach of building new hard assets. So next slide, please. So here you can see the 10 principles themselves. I don't have time to go into each of them in detail, but as you can see, they range from strategic planning aligned with global frameworks like the 2030 Agenda, the SDGs, and the Paris Agreement, through to avoiding environmental impacts and investing in nature, fiscal sustainability and innovative financing. So as I said, the economic and financial aspects as well. But I'd just like to zoom in on principle number 5 on the next slide, please, which I think has some interesting linkages. Sorry, one slide back. Yeah, thank you. Which has some interesting linkages to this topic. So this principle is about resource efficiency and circularity. It states that circularity and the use of sustainable technologies and construction materials should be planned and designed into infrastructure systems to minimize their footprints and reduce emissions, waste, and other pollutants. So this is about the promotion of green technologies and smart solutions, such as using data for service provision that responds to demand in real time, or for example, to monitor performance and improve energy efficiency in built infrastructure. But equally important, I think, are the innovations in policy design. So the principle covers guidance on sustainable public procurement and accounting for total environmental, social, and economic costs in the procurement process, and embedding sustainability criteria in contracts like use of innovative construction materials, for example. And then on the next slide, please, related to this line of thinking, we have an infrastructure lifecycle diagram that's presented in this report. And the diagram covers not just the phases of an individual infrastructure project, but also the so-called upstream phases of strategic planning, prioritization, and procurement, for example. So during these phases, there's a lot of scope for interventions and innovations that drive sustainability in those individual projects downstream. So the principles cover these considerations across the whole life cycle, starting off at strategic planning down to decommissioning and repurposing in order to help create an overall enabling environment for sustainable infrastructure. So next slide, please. And this work on the principles is complemented by 10 case studies from around the world, each corresponding with one principle or an aspect of a principle. And they really provide examples and highlights of good practices and challenges in a real world context to illustrate the 10 principles. And they're part of a growing database that UNEP is developing with partners to show these different experiences from around the world. And on the next slide, this work is further complemented by the Sustainable Infrastructure Tool Navigator. So this is essentially a database of tools co-managed by UNEP and GIZ. It helps practitioners and stakeholders to integrate sustainability into infrastructure planning and delivery by helping them to guide through by infrastructure lifecycle phase, or by the theme, or by a particular sector that they may be interested in. So it helps to match stakeholders with the tools needed for implementation. And I'll finally just mention then that UNEP is continuing to support member states in implementing the principles, drawing on these case studies and various tools and other assessments. And I'm looking forward to hearing some examples from around the world in the discussion coming up. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I'm assuming that the report will be in the chat box in a minute. Is that correct? So please, yes, it is.
Yes, I will.
So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much. So for more details, please find the link of the report in the chat box. And thank you, Joseph, for the very interesting presentation. So now we are moving to the panel discussion. We have 3 distinguished panelists with us today to share their insights and experiences on how to seize the opportunities presented by green technologies and sustainable infrastructure. This is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Nelson Lage, Chairman of the Board of Directors at the Portuguese Energy Agency, ADEN, Mr. Shebura Camara, Director of Policy, Research, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation at the Ministry of Energy, Sierra Leone, and Mr. Warren Evans, Special Senior Advisor Climate Change from the Office of the President at the Asian Development Bank. So I will start with Mr. Nelson Lage. I have a question for you, which I kindly ask you to respond for 4 minutes. So my question is, what are the major challenges that prevent countries from developing innovative capacities and seizing the opportunities presented by green technologies to contribute to national development priorities and accelerate the progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals? What are the major challenges that countries are facing? I'll give you 4 minutes to respond, comment. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks to UNCTAD and to UNEP for the invitation and the opportunity, and a special hello to the Ambassador Ana Paula Zacarias. Of course, also my regards to the speakers, moderation, and also my colleagues from the panel. I would start by saying that more than challenges, I would like to highlight what I consider the advantage and the opportunities that we have. So I would say that from the outset, I highlight what I consider the environmental sustainability, in which green technologies really helps to reduce the environmental footprint. They also help to mitigating climate change and conserving natural resources, and also protecting the biodiversity. Then the transition to a green economy will definitely create business opportunities and green jobs, which will accelerate economic growth, especially in the renewable energy sector, but also energy efficiency sectors. And this will allow great potential for innovation and also great potential for competitiveness. Thirdly, I like the resiliences and energy security. Green technologies contribute to the diversification of the energy mix. They also reduce dependence on non-renewable and volatile sources, such as the fossil fuels. The other side, the commitment to diversified renewable energies will, and I'm really sure that will strengthen energy security, making systems much more resilient to interruptions and to external shocks. And this is an important issue nowadays. And finally, I understand that the green technology can provide direct benefits to people. In reality, they are at the center of everything that we do, that you do at United Nations, that we do in Portugal. So green technology can provide direct benefits to people, access to clean energy, clean water, sustainable transport, healthy environments improve also the quality of life of populations, especially the most vulnerable communities. In that said, it's also important to highlight that international collaboration, international cooperation has allowed the sharing of a lot of sharing of scientific knowledge, allowing the adoption of best practice and experience in the field of green technologies. So in this changing world, many countries have adopted policies and have adopted measures to promote green technologies, such as tax incentives, subsidies, financing programs, and much more favorable legislations for energy transition. So in summary, I would say that green technologies are strongly aligned with the United Nations SDGs. Countries that choose to follow the sustainable paths will need to accelerate their bets on clean and affordable energy, on climate action, also on energy transition, and also, in very important, the creation of sustainable cities and communities, so that they could contribute to in a direct way to the SDGs. So even so, there is a lot of work to be done. That's everything. It's not so perfect. So there's a lot of work to be done and challenges to overcome, such as the end of regulatory barriers, the focus on information, the focus on awareness and training, and also the strengthening of international cooperation. It was already said, especially with developing countries, which must align their policies with the objectives of the SDGs. So that's everything for now. I'll pass you the floor, Anna.
So thank you very much, Nelson. So now I will give the floor to Mr. Shebora Camara. And I have a question for you as well. What are the examples of successful national, sub-regional, and regional initiatives that could be upscaled to promote the adoption of clean energy, integrate sustainability into infrastructure policymaking, and foster a more collaborative approach for green innovation? Again, I will give you 4 minutes to respond and comment. Thank you very much. Mr. Shebora Camara?
Yes, Long. Thank you very much for sharing this webinar, and also all participants. So let me go straight to the point. Hello?
Yes.
Yes. So as based on the question, of course, from our point, from my experience in the sector,
I'm afraid your connection, internet connection.
Not so much in terms of regional, both regional and national. The internet. Hello?
Hello, I think that your internet connection is not working very well. We can hardly hear you.
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Yes. At national level, successfully, we've implemented policies and programs, especially with the project, what we call the RREP, the Rural Renewable Energy Project. We've implemented that with 92 mini grids from the implementation point of view. They also from the policy level, we've done we've drafted, we've completed the formulation of our renewable energy policy, the energy efficiency policy, our mini grids regulations, then at national level. There at the sub-regional level, what we have an organization called ECRI, the ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. At the sub-regional level, we've completed the we've completed the formulation of renewable energy and energy efficiency policies adopted for all West African countries, comprises of 15 countries. So we've done that. Also, recently, we've just validated the hydrogen, the green hydrogen policy. We done the validation in Gambia, and also we did another meeting again in Ivory Coast in terms of the green hydrogen policy. So that we've done that at sub-regional level, but at the level of national, we haven't done anything yet in terms of bringing up the action plans that we're going to set. But at the sub-regional level, ECRI, and the African Commission level, we've set that as one of our targets for us to cascade that down into the respective countries. So also at national level, we constructed 92 mini grids, and these mini grids, they are geared to us reducing carbon emissions. And of course, when during the calculations, we've reduced up to 1,100, that is 1,100 tons in terms of carbon reduction. Then also, let me just briefly give you some statistics in terms of this, our interventions on the renewable energy space at national level. Then also, we have, for our mini grids, at mini grids level, we have 4.5 megawatts of installed capacity for our mini grids for the 92 sites. So with that, we've supplied over 4,000 megawatts from our mini grids at 92 sites. We've done that at national level. Then also for our customers, we have over 20,000 customers countrywide that are connected from these mini grids. Then on the aspect of beneficiaries from these renewable energy projects, we have over 500,000 people benefiting from these interventions in terms of renewable energy at national level. So on the whole, at national level, these are some of. Then if I can go further again, we have the intervention on the private sector, what we call the IPPs, the independent power producers. We have about 4 companies that have already secured the PPAs, the power purchase agreement in Sierra Leone, to implement solar energy projects. And the 2 are already, they've already completed construction, of which the one company has an installed capacity of 5 megawatts of solar energy, and the other one, which is planning, they have 10 megawatts at 10 megawatts at Kono, already completed. Hello?
Well, if you could conclude.
Yes. Okay.
Now you have
so, yes, but let me just highlight a few challenges we have, in terms of both national and regional.
You have 30 seconds, sir.
Okay. Now, some of the few challenges we have is tariff, because our tariff here is very high, especially for the mini grids. Our mini grids tariff in Sierra Leone is very high. So that's one of our challenges. There also in terms of the capacity in the sense in terms of building the technical capacity of staff within the renewable energy sector and also the energy sector. Thank you very much because of time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. So now I'll give the floor to Mr. Evans. And I have a question for you. What should the international community, government, private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders do to harness the full potential of green technologies and sustainable infrastructure while minimizing risks and reducing inequalities? So again, 4 minutes to respond and comment, please.
I think you could write books about that question.
Oh yes, of course.
But thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'll try and be very quick and specific on a few things that we're doing at ADB and other MDBs are doing. As the ambassador mentioned, the multilateral development banks have a pretty critical role in moving the agenda forward. I think probably the most important thing that we're doing and that the international community can do to help is to assist developing countries in making the kinds of policy, regulatory, and institutional reforms that are required to really shift quickly to green technologies, in particular on the energy front. We have, all of the MDBs have one version or another, we call them different things, but we have policy-based loans. And these are basically loans that are designed to help governments overcome the costs, and there are social and economic costs to policy and regulatory reforms, in particular reforms that allow the private sector to come in areas like renewable energy, energy efficiency, and so on. The good news is we've seen a dramatic increase in our region in investments in renewable energy and green technologies, including manufacturing, solar manufacturing, EVs, batteries. Since COVID, since the pandemic ended, we've seen a dramatic increase in investments. This has happened mainly because of regulatory reforms in those countries. It's opened up space for the international private sector to come in and compete. And in some countries like Cambodia, with very little technical assistance from ADB, they were able to bid out solar PV. And when this happened, it was the lowest price solar in the region at that time. So we've seen a dramatic increase in both action and opportunities. So I think that the key message is to help get the policy framework, the regulatory framework, and the institutions needed at the government level to make these work, get those in place. The second thing, of course, is money. And the discussion on mobilizing private finance and the need for trillions instead of billions is absolutely correct. I think our role is to really do a better job of using public sector money to mobilize private sector. And so we're doing a lot on helping countries to issue their own green bonds, blue bonds, sustainability bonds. These are growing rapidly, and in particularly in middle-income countries, once we provide some technical assistance to do the first or second bond issue, then they take off on their own. They don't need our help after that. In the lower income countries, there's a lot of help required, a lot of financing required to assist them. And then finally, we need to get much more innovative on how we mobilize money. So I'll just mention one that we're doing. It's called the Innovative Finance Facility for Climate in Asia and Pacific. It's a little bit complicated, but essentially it uses donor contributions, donor guarantees. As of now, it's US, UK, Japan, Korea, Sweden, Denmark, and possibly Italy that will give a guarantee which allows us to carve out a part of our sovereign portfolio. So loans that are already on our books, we take off the books because they take the first loss on those. That allows us to mobilize about $4 to $5 for every dollar of guarantee. So we anticipate about $3 billion in guarantees. That'll allow us to mobilize about $12 to $15 billion of new money, new headroom for financing climate action. This is the first time I think that you've seen that the world will see a leveraging of that type in the MDB world anyway. And if this works, it's sort of a big experiment, but if it works, we think it can be used by other MDBs and potentially other IFIs. So we've got to get much more innovative. We've got to use that public money to be more effectively mobilizing private sector money. And I think that focusing on country policy, regulations, and so on is the key to enabling that. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that we had very interesting interventions from different angles and from different regions of the world. So I think that we could hear a little more from our panelists. And I have more questions for you. We have one question in the Q&A function, so I'll get there. But for the time being, I would like to ask, and I will leave for you to, if you will, would like to respond, or it's up to you. So I think that who could share with us some policies that are effective in promoting technological innovation? And here, when we are talking about policies, it's not only public policies, but policies from the technical point of view. I think it will be interesting to hear from you what you think about this. Could you share with us some policies that are effective in promoting technological innovation? Who would like to respond to this?
I could just, Anna.
Yes, Neslan, please.
Yeah, more than me. Yeah, just highlight some important challenge that Portugal faced in reality, and the achievements, and I think that it managed to achieve because we had interesting public policy that we did our way, and we did our way, as Ambassador said, towards the SDG. So that's what's about here. So I just highlight some, I'll say some six achievements that are related, if you don't mind, that are related with SDG. I'll say that, okay. For example, clean and affordable energy is perhaps where Portugal have made the most progress. The promotion of renewable energy, and ensuring really access to clean, affordable and sustainable energy for ever increasing number of citizens. So that this is a good example of how expanding incentives for renewable energy can lead us to achieve this objective. So Portugal is increasing the share of renewable energy sources in its energy mix, reducing what we say the dependence on fossil fuels and combating climate change. Where Portugal really also stands out in what concerns public policy, in what concerns intervention of the government, it's in the water sector, being aligned with SDG 6. Our country has a level of excellence in the quality of water for human consumption with a percentage of 99% of safe water. So I think it's a result of really interesting and really important public policies that we did in the last years. Portugal is also building a more resilient energy infrastructure, promoting the industrialization innovation, which includes electrification of society as we say a determining factor for the energy transition. This commitment complies with SDG 9, so innovation in infrastructures. So this is also important. It's also a result of public policies and also a result of an interaction between public and the private sector. On the other end, documents that are not just documents, are policies, such as the National Energy Plan that was just presented to the European Commission, or the financial instruments that is in that we have under our National Environmental Fund, make possible to promote energy transition, make possible to promote energy efficiency in buildings, transport, and industry. And this way, they will contributing to the SDG 11 and also for SDG 12. So I think this is also important because it's also important to contribute in a broader way to reduce energy consumption. So we are also doing that, having these framework, these important national frameworks that are now being reviewed in what concerns, for example, the energy and climate plan. Portugal also invested in development of public-private partnerships, so important nowadays for the green innovation, and that is expressed by the SDG 17, partnerships and means of implementation. So we consider that they are really vital importance as they promote really collaboration between the different actors, such as governments, companies, other institutions. It's also important if we manage and move towards also to have the involvement also of the civil society. So I think these are I may say the success structure for the implementation of this. And just to final that, saying that we are really we know that we still have we still have a lot of challenge to overcome, but I think Portugal has been recognized internationally for these initiatives in renewable energy, also initiatives in sustainability. So I think we have all these good examples that we have been giving, and they are all the result of an effective citizen thinking policies that we've been implementing in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Mr. Warren Evans or Mr. Sheva Kamal would like to.
I'm happy to.
Yes, okay.
I'm happy
please.
to come in on this. I think that I don't think it's about promoting technology innovation in most of our client countries. I think it's about figuring out how to get the policies so that they can access the technologies that developed countries are more readily that are more readily accessible in developed countries. So, for example, if a developed country has the ability to provide incentives to develop new technologies and adopt new technologies, what we need is a better mode of de-risking access to those technologies in developing countries. And that's partly finance, it's partly policy and regulatory reform. So I think what we really need to focus on is how to get greater access, and it's usually national policies that are holding things back. For example, access of international competition. So I don't think it's about developing new technologies in our client countries near as much as adopting what's out there at scale. But I do want to mention, Nelson mentioned energy efficiency in buildings. There is huge potential across Asia to retrofit buildings and achieve massive gains, savings in energy consumption. It's not happening. It's not happening because it's difficult and the policies aren't there and the funding, the de-risking funding is not there. So I think if there's one area that has huge potential to move into very quickly, it's on building energy efficiency, and Portugal's success would be very applicable in many of our client countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I think we are going to the Q&A that we. Yes, please. You want to intervene? Please go ahead.
Yes.
Please.
Yes. For my point, based on our experience, based on our scenario in West Africa, and to be specific, Sierra Leone, let me just categorically say here that the policy points are very key, because from our experience in the implementation of the RREP, that is the Rural Renewable Energy Policy, previously we had no regulation or policy on mini grids, on our mini grids. So it was during construction that we as a government, we thought that, though we don't have the regulation on our mini grids, that let's bring a policy now. So we drafted a policy, a regulation, which was done by the Electricity and Water Regulatory Commission, what we call EWRC. They did that regulation. So by then, that helped us to say in the policy, it was figured clearly that the type of technology, the innovations to be used, they also in terms of see how best we can use the state-of-the-art technologies to reduce the tariff, and also to reduce the capex of the project. That is to say, the capital expenditure of those projects. So when you have the right policies in place, I think that can really help. Then also, let's also look at from the sub-regional level. Let's say, for instance, here in Sierra Leone, we have our sub-regional level, what we call the ECOWAS, that is ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. So most times, what they are doing, they look at what technologies that could be specifically implemented in the region of certain countries based on the geographic location of that country. So they can also recommend that based on this your geographic location, I think this technology could work better and this could work good for you. So we look at that point again. There also, my colleagues spoke of something very important, which is lacking, especially in my country, the energy efficiency. We have a policy, the renewable energy and energy efficiency policies. We have them. Also, we have the action plans. But in terms of the implementation, because in the energy efficiency policy, we have buildings, industries, motor vehicles, and all the rest, transportation, and all the rest of it. But we are still, as a country, not able to implement those policies yet because of so many challenges in our countries. Of course, we all know our economy, they're also based on the technical capacity and the technical law in some of these countries. So these are some of the challenges we're facing. Sometimes the policies could be there, but the capacity, again, it's another issue again. So let's just look at those fronts. That's my just simple contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. These perspectives from different regions of the world, so they are very complementary. No way that, well, we really need this collaboration and this international collaboration and cooperation more and more. So now I'm going to jump into the Q&A. And for the time being, we have here 2 questions. I'll start with the first one. In order to achieve this sustainable and proper infrastructure in green innovation, regulations and policies has to be biased towards innovations. How does UNCTAD and others strengthen the innovation capacity of developing countries? And how do you support their policies to provide a proper linkage between international initiatives and country-specific initiatives? So again, about international collaboration, and who would like to first respond to this question?
If I may, Anna, since the question directly mentions UNCTAD, perhaps I could say a couple of words.
Yes, please, Sango.
So specifically about UNCTAD and technology and innovation, there are 3 dimensions of the work of UNCTAD that tries to support developing countries' efforts to become more innovation friendly. One is the work like the one that we are presenting today, analytical work trying to understand what are the main factors that impact on the ability of countries to not just innovate, but also to, as has been said a moment ago, to absorb innovation that happens elsewhere and to deploy it in the specific conditions in the country and to harness that for their own development interest. So there's all this line of analytical products that UNCTAD produces, the Technology and Innovation Report, but also a very successful publication on the field of digital technologies, the digital world, where we also have another major publication, Digital Economy Report. We also have the World Investment Report. All these publications try to propose governments and other stakeholders, not just governments, because we think that public-private partnership and partnerships with players from the civil society are very important to advance this agenda. Then we are a safe space for countries to engage in intergovernmental dialogue. UNCTAD is not a place where binding agreements are made, but it's a place where governments can speak to each other and establish common ground on a number of policies. And I mentioned in my presentation the need to rethink the trade rules and the IP rules to make them more favorable to innovation in developing countries, to facilitate the process of innovation in the developing world, and UNCTAD provides a space for that kind of conversation. And we do that in two kind of different settings. One is the UNCTAD machinery itself. The other one is the UN Commission on Science and Technology for Development, and where we have these kind of conversations ongoing. And again, it's not delivering binding rules, but it's helping create a common understanding about the direction in which international policy and rule setting should go, so that we enable developing countries to become more innovative. And the third line of action is specific technical cooperation projects, and we have, again, a very rich portfolio of products in this area, ranging from policy diagnostics to identify the elements, as somebody said a moment ago, that are many of the obstacles to innovation are actually to be found in national policies, and how to adapt and reform policies so that the environment, the country becomes more supportive of innovation. We also have projects to do the same kind of assessment in the digital sphere for e-commerce, for example, the e-trade readiness assessments. We have projects to support capacity building for policymakers so that they understand what innovation is, what are the needs of innovators who are all in the private sector, and sometimes the mentality of the policymakers is not really well tuned to the needs of innovators. So we have a very wide range of instruments to support policy makers in developing countries. So that's in terms of what UNCTAD can offer. That's what I would say, and I encourage the poster of the question to approach us if they're interested in more details. Thank you.
Yes, and that can be seen in the report that you presented today in this side event. So for everyone that is in this session, they can go to the chat box and they can find the link for the report, both from UNCTAD and UNEP's reports. For the second question, what are the policies of technically leading countries to transfer their frontier technology to lower income countries? Are there such policies or not? If yes, how they have been implemented? How the United Nations is working in this area? So I leave this question to the three panelists and UNCTAD and UNEP. Who would like to intervene first? So again, it's about to transfer their frontier technology to lower income countries. Ambassador Ana Paula Zacarias said in the introductory remarks, the partnership that Portugal already has with Cape Verde. And so it's something that is happening all over the world. But here I think that we could present some cases. UNEP, UNCTAD.
I'm happy to come in. I see a couple of hands are raised though, so I wouldn't want to jump in ahead of colleagues. Nelson, I see your hand is raised.
Joseph.
I can answer, but I think it will be okay. It's more directed to the United Nations, but I can say that I think it's very important two things. One, it's collaboration, cooperation, and as Ambassador Zacarias said, Portugal has been doing that for a long time. Today, this morning, ADEN and the Portugal Energy Agency signed an MOU, more than MOU, it's a collaboration protocol with the city, a municipality from Cape Verde. So, as you can see, cooperation is ongoing. And I think one of the ways to have this transfer, it's through collaboration, through cooperation. We should share our experience. We should also adapt our experience to the different realities. So I think it's very important to show to others what we are doing, to show what the results of our public policies are, and in Portugal, in what concerns are then, of course, that we are more focused on buildings, energy efficiency, also on other areas such as the democratization of the access of energy through the energy community. So this morning we talked with Cape Verde about these experiences. So I think more or less we are showing what we do in what concerns public policies, and we are also transferring some of our knowledge, some of our experience to other countries, to other places. And the other thing, I think it's very important that we should wait till we have some mature technology in order to implement that. So it's very important to secure that the technology that we want to implement, that it's mature, so that we can lower the cost of that implementation. But that's something that we should do not only on our countries but everywhere. So if we want to implement, if we want to put in practice some technology, the technology should be mature enough in order not to have high prices in what concerns the implementation. So I think the United Nations might have much more in terms for this question, but I'll say collaboration, cooperation, exchange of experience and good practice, and also mature technology. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Anybody else would like to intervene under this question? Yes, Joseph, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share some examples from a
Yes,
UNEP
please.
perspective. So on infrastructure specifically, we've been working to build a learning network around the world. So this is based on the idea of case-based learning and using presentation of case studies and different tools. And so, for example, we've been working to create virtual learning hubs on specific topics. So we had, for example, policymakers from one country coming and sharing their experiences on relevant technologies for green buildings, for example, and that was shared with other practitioners and policymakers from different countries. So this is an ongoing area of work that UNEP is looking to promote for sure. And more broadly as well, we continue to have regional capacity building courses on sustainable and resilient infrastructure. So again, similarly, this brings together different countries from a region and sometimes outside experiences as well, following a similar kind of case-based approach to provide inspiration from other countries around the world that are really advancing on this and implementing good practices. And often this is aligned with the principles I mentioned that I was presenting just earlier on. So hopefully that gives a bit of a flavor from a UNEP perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if no other panelists would like to intervene, I would like to ask another question. How to make sure the rapid, fast technological development is inclusive for all? What are your ideas? So this goes for our three panelists. Who would like to respond first?
I'm happy to. That's a great question, and one of the biggest challenges I think that we all have is equitable development across the board. It's not just on technologies or clean energy, but I think that as we see the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy, the concept of just transition has really picked up. The recognition that in many of the developed countries that have started making the transition, there wasn't a lot of, in some countries, there was not a lot of upstream thinking about what the impacts would be on a whole range of the labor force, not just those working in fossil fuel energy, but coal mining and the communities around these areas, and understanding that you don't just plot down renewable energy where coal-fired power is generated. It doesn't work that way. People have to move, or they have to have new types of employment. So this recognition has really, I think, picked up over the last couple of years, and So for example, we have what we call the energy transition mechanism, which is a program to decommission coal-fired power plants early in several countries, starting in Indonesia. And an integral part of that is the just transition. So it's not just decommissioning coal, it's decommissioning coal, replacing it with renewables, and figuring out what the impacts are, the socioeconomic impacts, the cultural impacts on those that will be affected by this transition, and then planning how to establish social safety nets, training programs. It's extremely complex. It takes into account every element of development that there is. It's education, health, social well-being. So it's extremely complicated, and we're just learning. Nobody's really done this at scale. So I think that there is no good answer to your question, except the good news is that we're thinking about it. We're trying and we're budgeting for it. It's recognized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any of the other panelists would like to intervene on this? Ambassador.
Ambassador first.
Please, Ambassador Ana Paula Zacarias, please go ahead.
Well, just to say very briefly that I totally agree with Warren on this. And for us, this was fundamental in the sense that we need to look into the social implications of this transitions. It's the green transition, but it's also the technological transition. Both transitions will have social implications, and we need to deal with them. And we need to deal with them in terms of the right skills for the right jobs that will come. We need to look into education. We look to have the need to have this social networks that will make like a safety net for the people that will be affected. And so this is the reason behind the organization of the social summit, that the European Social Summit that we had in Oporto in 2021. And this is also one of the reasons of the World Social Summit that the Secretary General wants to or proposed to organize to be organized by the United Nations in 2025. I think because we have to see all the SDGs in an integrated manner. So it's energy, but energy is connected with water, and water is connected with poverty, and poverty is connected with the social dimension and with education and with gender issues. So the beauty of the system of the SDGs is that they should be seen in an integrated way. And when we talk about energy, we talk about all the rest. So I think it's very, very interesting, the question, and an issue that we need to look into is this integrated way to look at things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Just to
Nelson.
So I mean, and I don't want to. I agree with. I fully agree with Warren and with dear Ambassador Zacarias. We have really big. This is the biggest challenge. I think, as Warren said, we are all learning. So we don't have the right formula, but I think that we should do, at least we should secure three things. We should think, we should implement, we should think and should implement public policy with citizens, as I said before, in the center. And we should consider all the different dimensions. This is not only green transition, it's also a digital transition, it's also a social transition. So we are living really, really challenging times. So we have to think this in these different dimensions when we talking about public policy. We should have in mind the impact of our policies in the community, in the citizens, how they will benefit, how they will participate. So this will lead me to this one thing that I already said. It's the promotion of really the democratization of access to energy. We are doing that in Portugal with energy communities. There's a lot of things to be done, but we are already doing that. We are giving the tools to the community, tools to the citizens to be part of this process. Another interesting thing is that energy literacy, it's also very important, and that's one of the main missions of the Portuguese energy agencies, is to increase the levels of energy literacy. But another important issue is it's training. It's And Portugal just launched the first training center for the energy transition. I think that's really important to highlight that, because we will have a specific national training center for energy transition, and that's really really important. We are sure that with that training center, no one will be left behind, because we will be training everyone, people that were working on areas that are not right now. They are not a priority right now, because we are moving from fossil fuels to renewables. So we needed that all the people that worked on that areas, we need them working with us on renewable energy. So that's why we're launching this national training center. It's a partnership between the Public Institute for Training, the Renewable Energy Association, and ADEN. And I hope that will start working very soon. So seeing implement public policies, having the citizen on the center, democratization of the access to energy, literacy, and also training. I think that's that can be on the equation if we have one, or if you know how to right now to write one. Okay.
Of course. Thank you very much. Shebra Kamara, would you like to make some final remarks?
Yes. Let me say this. The key point energy transition, from my perspective here in Sierra Leone, looking at, for instance, our energy mix. If you look at the energy mix, fossil fuels dominate, right? What follows in terms behind the energy transition is what we call huge financial investments from our side here. Because this was something at regional level, we discussed that at ECOWAS level for us to see how best we can transition most of our energy sectors. But these were the points we raised, that one, the financial impact, then two, the technological impact, then three, how do we, during the transition period, there's going to be what we call a fallow period. That is to say, during that time, there are certain areas or certain plants will definitely go off. So how do we leverage those issues? So then again, we have a capacity, the gap. For instance, in Sierra Leone, we don't have specific institution that will surely take care of energy trainings, renewable energy capacity building. Sometimes, unless we go out to other countries like the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. So you see, but all of these things needs to be domesticated. We need to have that in country for us, because when we have that in country, we can even cascade that again to our institutions. That is, at secondary level, we take it to secondary level onto university level, so that these are programs we can even put in our curriculum, so that students coming up will have that knowledge at an early stage. So a whole lot of things to be done when it comes to energy transition. So many things, but for instance, in Sierra Leone, the gap still remains, and we have a huge gap on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now it's time to conclude. So in this side event, were presented successful examples of national and regional initiatives on promoting clean energy and instruments that foster a more collaborative approach for green innovation. In line with the Sustainable Development Goals 7 and 9, good practices were highlighted that supported the use, adoption, and adaptation of green technologies, as well as innovative approaches that integrate sustainability into infrastructure policy making at the systems level. I hope this side event served as a platform for peer learning and awareness, raising policy options to develop innovative capabilities and for sustainable development. As Ambassador Ana Paula Zacarias rightly referred in the opening remarks, green technologies will help to reduce poverty, and it's not one or another. The UNCTAD and UNEP's reports analyze the opportunities presented by the green transition and the technologies associated with it. By unleashing green innovations, countries can have access to green windows of opportunity, for not only building resilience and climate change mitigation mechanisms, but also for spurring economic growth and technological development. These opportunities can particularly support developing countries to leap out of the series of crises and to move forward. The event looked at the case of Portugal in view of its second voluntary national review. As a country traditionally resilient on energy imports, Portugal has successfully implemented policies to promote renewable energy production, enhance energy efficiency, and strengthen energy resilience. All in all, it's a combination of ICT, skills, education, training, R&D, industrial capacity, and finance support, along with the twin transition, digital and green, as pillars for a strategy. The importance of international collaboration and cooperation were underlined, as well as a better use of public money to attract private money. Eventually, we don't have a final response to the challenges, but we are thinking about them, and we are in a learning curve, and that is very good. So thank you very much for all the speakers, for all the panelists, and for everybody that is and was listening to us. Unfortunately, it was an online event, but I think it served its purposes. So let's continue on in this learning curve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.